Good morning again. My name is India Nielsen-Barfus. I am the Program Manager in the Office of Outdoor Recreation over events. Today we will hear from Thom Carter about air quality in Utah and what you can do before, during, and after your recreation activities to improve air quality. Thom will be giving a presentation, and then at about 9 a.m. I will be moderating today's Q&A. Before we get into the presentation and all of that, of course, I need to go over some housekeeping items, which I'm sure everybody is pretty familiar with at this point. Patrick, thank you. Change to the last slide. This slide will show you how to use the Q&A chat feature because we will keep everybody on mute the entire time, including during Q&A. This just shows you, if you're not familiar with Google Meet, how to use that Q&A chat function, which you will see some kind of going back and forth right now. About some conversation. We'll begin the Q&A at about 9 a.m. We'll wrap up at about 9:15 a.m. But you are welcome to type questions into the chat box at any point during the conversation, and then we can queue those up a little bit later. And we will also be randomly drawing the name of somebody who types a question into the chat, so you could win a very cool outdoorsy prize if you get engaged in the conversation that way. That's it for housekeeping. I'm very excited to introduce today's speaker, Thom Carter. Thom was named the second executive director for the Utah Clean Air Partnership in October of 2017. UCAIR is a nonprofit organization established to bring communities together to work with one goal in mind: improving Utah's air. Thom has a diverse background, as some of you have been on the meeting for a few minutes. You've heard he has a background in political and policy arena, as well as international experience in professional sports. His career has taken him all over the country and world with focus on policy, politics, and fundraising, as well as professional sports management. In the policy world, he worked in Ohio, Tennessee, Washington, D.C., and New Jersey, and was an elected official while he was in New Jersey. Now at UCare, Thom sits on the Board of Governors for the Salt Lake Chamber, the Governor's Energy Advisory Council, Bike Utah's Advisory Council, and he co-chairs the Healthy Salt Lake Steering Committee. Thom was named a Utah Business 40 Under 40 in 2019, and he works diligently to bring partners together for collective impact in addressing Utah's air quality challenges. Thom, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, India. I'm a narcissist, so I love hearing my bio, and so it just makes me feel warm to hear about how great I am. So no, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Great. It's great to be here with everybody this morning. I see some friends in the meeting, and so it's good to be here with you all. And thanks for giving all of us a little bit of your time to talk about outdoor recreation and air quality and how everybody can work together to be part of the solution as it relates to what's going on here. Let me tell you a little bit about UCAIR before we get into too much of this. UCAIR was founded about 6, maybe 7 years ago as an initiative by Governor Herbert, with this idea that air quality had become a little too political, as an understatement. And when issues, especially environmental issues, get politicized, oftentimes nothing happens. And he wanted to take the politics out of it. He wanted people to take responsibility. He wanted there to be better understanding of what was going on. He wanted to engage the public in finding ways to be part of the solution. So UCAIR was founded to get out and get into the community and help people know how to be part of that solution. This might come as a surprise, but there are Utahns don't necessarily like to be told what to do by the government. Maybe we see that playing out in real time right now on a couple of issues. So while UCAIR initially lived as a division within the Department of Environmental Quality, it very quickly got rolled out to be a standalone non-governmental 501c3. So we are not government, we are nonprofit. So we can take all your Giving Tuesday money, you can send it my way, and it'll be tax deductible. So, to quote Parks and Rec, money please. Just kidding. I keep saying just kidding when I'm not kidding at all. Anyway, the UCAIR has 3 foundational pillars within our organization. The first one is a little bit what we're doing today. It's public engagement, outreach, and education, and we do it on a mass level, right? You, as we enter into the winter season, probably in about a month, you will see billboards, television commercials, digital messaging, streaming messaging. My team has encouraged me to start doing some TikTok ads, but I'm not going to learn TikTok dances because I'm too old for that. But we're out serving messages to the public about, 1, what's the problem with air quality, and 2, how they can be part of the solution. Because one of the issues we have is just general misinformation and lack of understanding. And because of that lack of understanding, people aren't sure how they can be part of the solution. So we are just delivering messages of how to be engaged. And we do that all across the board. So that is pillar one, is education and outreach. Second pillar is partnership. We often say if everybody's the problem, everybody has to be part of the solution. And so we are trying to bring as many individuals, communities, groups, organizations together to find real concrete solutions that they can work together to complete. And quite honestly, you hear the governor and a number of stakeholders in the community talk about the Utah way of getting things done, special sauce of Utah. Partnership is that. We're not interested in identifying villains. We're interested in creating heroes and working together. And that, I think, is what has been able to move the needle forward so aggressively over the last 5 years in air quality, that people are willing to work together. And we've seen that. It's one of the reasons why we depoliticize this issue so much, why Republicans are the chief drivers on air quality bills in the legislature. And let me just state, I'm not a lobbyist. We do work with our elected officials, but that's not our role is to get people to run air quality bills. Our job is to get people to engage. The last thing we do is grants. As India mentioned, I am not a scientist. I have no scientific background. But what we do is, because of our founding that started at the DEQ, our relationship remains very strong with the DEQ. So what we do is we'll go out to organizations, groups, governments, schools, entrepreneurs, inventors, and say, if you have an idea that might drive down emissions, that could drive down emissions or shift behaviors, apply to the UCAIR grants program. Every one of those grants is scored by the DEQ to see if its feasibility and the cost per ton savings, and then we give out about $250,000 of grants every year. That's what we do. We feel like we do it well. We enjoy engaging the public in good dialogue and getting us moving forward. So that's us. So what's going on with air quality? Let's just start there. One of the things that I like to do every time I speak to a group is just set a baseline of understanding, because there are a lot of words that we use, that the media use, that everybody uses, making an assumption that people know what it means. One of those words is inversion. Some of that words is particulate matter, some VOCs, ozone. I remember growing up, everybody talking about the ozone layer, and so when we talk about ozone, is it the same thing of, if I use aerosol hairspray and it's going to create a hole in the ozone? Is that the same thing we're talking about when we talk about summertime ground level ozone here in the Salt Lake region? So if you don't mind, I'm going to show a couple of videos, and hopefully this works. We tested it yesterday. The first video I'm going to show is an award-winning video on causes of inversion, just to set a baseline of understanding of what's going on. So let's first start with that video. Let's see if I can find it.
Before you can understand Utah's air quality challenges, you need to understand a little bit about our geography. Many of our valleys are surrounded by mountains. Take the Salt Lake Valley as an example. It has the Ochre Mountain Range to the west and the Wasatch Mountain Range to the east. These mountains meet at the south end of the valley to create a bowl. During the winter, this bowl causes a weather event known as an inversion. Basically, a layer of warmer air acts as a lid, trapping the cooler air below. And just as the cold air can't escape, neither can the pollution. We can't control the inversion. While it happens just a few times each year, the pollution it traps can't leave the valley until after a storm or heavy winds blow through. What we can control are the emissions we release into the air. This becomes increasingly important as the amount of pollution in our air doubles every day during periods of inversion. But the good news is, even simple changes to your daily routine can have a big impact on our air. Things like reducing the temperature on your thermostat, being idle-free in your car, or carpooling and riding transit help every Utahn breathe easier. In other words, if we work together, we can reduce the negative effects of inversion and improve Utah's air quality. So show UCare about Utah's air and make changes to reduce your emissions by visiting ucare.org today.
So, inversions. Now we know what that is. And I'm guessing because of who you are and your interest and engagement in the outdoor recreation, you understand that. But I think it's important for us to at least start on that baseline. Just a couple of points to review. Our wintertime air quality problem first starts with geography and then goes to weather, and then it's our emissions base. It's the things we do. It's the emissions that come from point sources, area sources, and mobile sources that are trapped by that lid, that inversion lid. And the only way to remove those emissions is for wind, rain, or snow. So a couple of things for you guys to be aware of. If someone comes to you and says, I have a plan that will eliminate inversions, two things are happening. First, either they don't understand inversions, or second, they're just a liar. So we always like to assume that they just don't understand. What we can do, and what we have done, what we'll continue to do, is mitigate the effects of inversion. We will try to draw out our emissions base so that instead of on the fourth day of the lid being on, we get to unhealthy air. It'll be the seventh or eighth day, and the meteorology will show us that there's a higher likelihood that on day 5 a storm will come, which helps us, than on day 3 will come. That's the benefit of us having these conversations about ways for individuals, families, communities, businesses to drive down their emissions. Now, I would be remiss to not mention the progress that's been made, which is significant and important. Last week, the Region 8 administrator of the EPA was in town, and many of you may know this, but in 2009, the state of Utah, these regions that really struggle along the Wasatch Front were designated in non-attainment, meaning that non-attainment with the federal EPA Clean Air Act standards, meaning they were exceeding the standards, that there was problems, that we were just continually having significantly unhealthy air. So when the federal government moves you into non-attainment, you have a couple of opportunities and options. You have increased regulations. You start moving levers to get things done. We were in non-attainment, then we were in moderate non-attainment, then we were in serious non-attainment, because we just couldn't keep driving down our emissions. On top of that, more people were coming. What's been fascinating, though, is that over the last 3 years, really after almost $1 billion spent by private industry based on regulations, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on the state, and then really behavioral change, we've seen, and including astronomical growth in this state. We have had 3 years of clean data, 3 years where we did not exceed the standard, and we have been moved out of non-attainment and back into attainment. It's a great day. It's a very, really great story to tell. But what's really important to know is that just because we're in attainment does not mean that we're done at all, because this is a geography and weather issue predominantly. We could have a cold, dry winter, and our air could be unbelievably unhealthy. It doesn't matter what we do to drive down our emissions. And so we have to be constantly vigilant. Anyway, so I wanted to set that baseline related to inversions. We don't just have a wintertime problem, although our wintertime problem is easy to recognize because you can see it, you can feel it, and you can taste it. We have a summertime problem as well, and that's ozone. So I'm gonna share another video with you as well.
Did you know that summertime ozone is just as harmful as winter inversion? Even though it's harder to see than winter inversion, summer ozone issues do exist and pose a health risk to those who are very young, elderly, and have pre-existing health problems. Summertime ozone is formed by emissions that chemically react with sunlight. Although the state's summer pollution levels are usually in a healthy range, there are days in July and August when the haze hangs on the valley floor and becomes unhealthy for Utahns. On longer, clear, sunny days, when there is little wind, ozone spikes. Cars, industrial facilities, household products, and other familiar activities emit nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds that bake together in direct sunlight to form ozone. All ozone levels impact our health. We can't control the formation of summer ozone. What we can control are the emissions we release into the air. Reducing our emissions helps lower pollution levels. And the good news is, even simple changes to your daily routine can have a big impact on our air. Things like using electric lawn tools, being idle-free in your car, or carpooling and riding transit help every Utahn breathe easier. In other words, if we work together, we can reduce the negative effects of summer ozone and improve Utah's air quality. So show UCare about Utah's air and make changes to reduce your emissions by visiting ucare.org today.
So ozone's a different problem. And really what's the struggle with ozone is when our days look the best. It's hot, sunny, sky is clear. We've got a summertime ozone problem, and it's an afternoon issue where, basically between 2 and 6, you've got this hot bake of a day where all those emissions bake together and become very dangerous for you. In fact, it's almost like getting a sunburn on your lawn. Additionally, you have the wildfire issue, and as we know, we had a historically bad year for wildfires just in Utah, let alone the California and Oregon wildfires, which we can't control. Unlike inversions, which are trapped by the mountains, we can't, wildfire smoke does not respect political boundaries. And so they're going to cross over, but we can have conversations when more than 1,000 wildfires in Utah were human caused. We can work on that. That's something we can work on. And fireworks, it's a whole other story for another time. Everybody likes fireworks. It's hard to be anti-fireworks, and I'm not anti-fireworks. We just need to have a conversation about what that means and how we can work together. So that's a baseline of understanding. Thanks for indulging that. I really want to make sure we're all there. So there's a story I like to tell in relation to, especially with outdoor groups. And I recognize that I'm very indoorsy. You guys can tell that I enjoy television and pizza. But I like the story. It's about a gentleman named David Brailsford, who in 2003, the British national cycling team was in a mess. They in 108 years, they had only won 1 gold medal in cycling and no Tour de France's. And so he was brought in to be the new head coach of the cycling team. And he looked and tried to do some math, and tried to figure out what was going on, and tried to find an edge for this team to bring them into a position, because he wanted to win. He wanted to put them in a place to win. He didn't think that they could do kind of the traditional things that other teams were doing to win, which of course was drugs and steroids. And so he went about and implemented the economics principle known as the aggregation of marginal gains, which is if you can improve 1% in overlooked and unexpected areas, and you aggregate that together, you might find ways to move your performance. You aggregate it, performance in a larger marginal and a gain together. So he identified a handful of things, and the 3 that I always like to talk about is, when you think about staying in hotels, I don't know, I'm not a guy that gets a good night's sleep at a hotel. I like my mattress, I like my pillow, I like being at home. And so he thought, well, you can't travel with your mattresses, you can't travel with your home, but what we can do is find great pillows. So we can travel with our pillows, and that will help increase our sleep. And it's a 1% gain, and let's see what that will do. He also, it's like the bikes, but maybe our seats need to be better. And so he went and found a better, tested all kinds of seats and increased the seats. Additionally, thought, maybe there's a way to make our tires stick to the road better. And so he found a rubbing alcohol and worked on that. It's totally legal, and he did that. So they continue to find these 1% gains across the board. And 5 years after he took over, the British cycling team dominated road and track cycling events in 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, where they won 60% of the gold medals available. 4 years later, in the Olympic Games in London, they raised the bar and set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. And that same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to win the Tour de France. The next year, a teammate won the race, and that same teammate named Chris Froome went on to win again in 2015, 16, and 17, giving the British team 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years. So why do I tell you this? What does that have to do with air quality? What does that have to do with what we're talking about today? Well, at UCAIR, we like to say, in our efforts to clear the air, there are no perfect answers, but there are practical solutions. As I mentioned on the offset, billions of dollars have been spent in what we refer to as low-hanging fruit. The rest of it is marginal gains. The rest of it are things that families, individuals, communities, businesses need to do, small and simple steps that we all can do that aggregated together will have an impact. And we see this, we understand it, and we know that these certain handful of things that we can do will help us have aggregated together, have a significant impact on air quality. Many small actions taken together can have an epic positive attitude on air quality. So the way I want to frame this conversation is on an outdoor adventure, right? A pre-adventure, a during the adventure, and a post-adventure, just to frame the conversation. And we can talk a little bit about a summertime adventure, whether you're going four-wheeling or hiking. We can also talk about wintertime, whether you're going on your snow machine or skiing. Some of this stuff is transferable. Because it's just all about finding ways to drive down your emissions. So let's just talk a little bit about things you can do prior to your adventure. So one thing, especially in the summertime, is, as we know with our summertime ozone issue, that there's that window, that 2 to 6 p.m. window where emissions bake together. And so there's a way to move your emissions around. So one of the things we encourage people to do, especially in the summertime, is to fuel your vehicle later in the evening once an ozone period has washed out. And that's marginal, but you think about, those are what we call VOCs, volatile organic compounds, get emitted, or it's minor, but it get emitted when you fill up your gas tank. And so if you can do that late at night, and those emissions will get washed out every night, especially in the summertime. We also encourage people to find and use zero spill, EPA approved gas cans. And those will reduce your emissions across the board. So fuel late in the evening, also for your, whether it's your RV, your snow machine, your ATVs, fuel those at a good time that will reduce, and then be spill free. And that'll help for the heat of the day, especially in the summertime, but also just emissions in general. One thing we also talk about, and I won't get into too much of this, and you can do a little research on that, is find ways to fill with Tier 3 fuel. Tier 3 fuel is a low sulfur fuel, which is mandated and by the federal government. There's a lot of math and science involved in this, but what we have is three of our 5 local refineries are currently producing Tier 3 locally, and a 4th will be breaking ground in 3 weeks on their Tier 3 project as well. Getting that Tier 3 fuel produced locally means that we'll have the purest, best Tier 3 fuel available. A Tier 3 fuel matched with a Tier 3 vehicle is like taking 4 out of 5 cars off the road. It will reduce your emissions 40%. 80%. A tier three vehicle is any vehicle that's 2018 model year or newer. And even if you don't have that new of a vehicle, you'll still see an aggregate, a marginal gain of 10 to 14 to 13%. And I saw the question, and Michelle Brown just gave you the answer in the chat on where you can get it. And there's a website. There's also a nuanced answer to where you can get it, and you can get it everywhere. Because all fuel is tier 3 fuel, but that website will give you the purist who's buying locally tier 3 gas as well. There's struggle with that. So we like to encourage people to buy tier 3 fuel. Additionally, this one is a little bit more complex, and that's, use electric. If you can purchase an electric vehicle, we encourage that. We understand that it's expensive, but it's becoming less and less expensive. The state has just incentivized, not the right word, the state has just allowed Rocky Mountain Power to invest $50 million in EV infrastructure statewide in their service region, so 80% of the state. It's going to happen over the next 5 years, $10 million a year, which is really exciting and important. When we think about why people don't purchase electric vehicles, our data shows us it's less about cost and more about charging. What we talk a lot about is range anxiety. Everything has a name now. People are concerned about where they're going to get the next charge. Even though new EVs have a 350, 400 mile range, which is similar to that of your gas tank, people don't feel anxiety about getting gasoline because they know that there's a gas station every 4 blocks or less. But they have a little bit of anxiety about wondering where their next charge is going to be. And so we believe kind of which comes first, chicken or egg, the idea of getting more and more infrastructure in place will solve that problem. You think about your anxiety related to the charge on your phone, right? How do people respond when their phone's at 50, at 20, at 10%? Where's the most popular place at an airport? It's by a plug jack, right? So getting as many charging stations out is important, and we believe cars will continue to flow as that happens. Additionally, the most popular vehicle in America is the Ford F-150. There's an electric F-150 coming to market in the next 4 months. And when Ford doubles down on electric vehicles, and we're doubling down on electric infrastructure, we believe that this will be very good for air quality and for us and for all these things going on. We also want people to check their tire pressure. Cars run better when you have less emissions, when your tire pressure is up. And then the other thing is, especially, I was on the call with one of our this week with one of our ski resorts. And, we were talking about air quality, we were talking about code, we were talking about a lot of things. And this is one thing that we encourage everyone to do. However, it's a little bit tough during COVID. And that's, don't show up to the mountain with just you in the vehicle. Figure out a way to fill your car. Now, if you can fill it with your family, that's great. Fill it with friends, wear masks. With that, we'll get more people on the mountain, but also it will take vehicles off the road. Carpool to your adventure. Carpool safely and to your adventure. That is a big deal, and will help us. Additionally, I think one of our biggest problems, we kind of create these mini inversions when we're heading up the mountain because of all the idling. People just sit, and you move every 4 minutes, and you idle your vehicle. I need you to be idle free. And I think we can all do that. I've had a number of friends and colleagues and partners say to me, but it's cold. And as I said, there are no perfect answers, but they're practical solutions. And, bring a blanket or a hat and gloves, which you're going to have anyway because you're going up the mountain, and turn off your vehicle, put on your hat. That's a way to stay warm. These are just ideas and practical solutions. The final thing pre-adventure is, if you can, take transit. Wear your mask. bring your hand sanitizer and get on the bus, head up the mountain, get on tracks, find a way to get up there without even using your vehicle. And that'll drive down emissions, and that's really exciting. During your adventure, just a couple of things. Responsible recreation is an easy one. There's, regular maintenance of your boat, your RV, your motorcycle, your snow machine. That'll just increase performance and reduce emissions. Additionally, if burn clean, you can use electric or propane for summer cookouts, or rent, drive electric when you're out there having fun. Those are just some simple, easy ways to do it. And then post in the summertime. So once you get home from your adventure and post in the summertime, you saw these suggestions in our video. You can mow your lawn with an electric lawnmower, or just mow in the evening, right? Once everything's been washed out, mow in the evening. But really, think about switching to electric. The batteries are stronger, they work better, they're quiet. In the wintertime, use an electric snowblower or a shovel. Those are great options and opportunities. We've done a number of partnerships and switch out programs to get people to switch to that. And it's interesting, what we like to talk about is that, the percentage of emissions that come from snowblowers is the exact same of the percentage of emissions that come from the refineries. And that's partly because when we use our snowblowers the moment a new lid comes on. And so if there's a way to use electric or shovel, hire a kid to shovel so you don't have a heart attack, that's just a good way to move it. The other things we've talked a little bit about before, just to travel-wise, carpool, skip a trip, take transit, walk or bike around, limit your driving, be idle-free. And then the last thing I want to share with you on this specifically is Telework. I see Michelle Brown on the call, and she's done a lot of great work for the state on Telework, and we provided her with this data. If it worked for COVID, we would be sitting in a room together having this conversation. It'd be much more interactive, and that'd be great. But one of the things we like to say, we have said over the last few months, is maybe the only silver lining to the pandemic has been telework. For years, what we've seen as we've tried to move forward with teleworking is there's been pushback and people giving us kind of three basic excuses as why they don't want to do it. One has just been general attitude. The second has been perceived productivity. And the third has been infrastructure. Well, look at infrastructure. Here we are. I don't know. People use Google Meetups, Google Teams. I don't know what this one's called. Google something. They use Google. They use Zoom. They use Outlook. They use Teams. There's all these things that we just didn't. I always joke that if I had a flux capacitor and a DeLorean, I'd go back to March, and I'd maybe warn some people about the pandemic, but I'd probably buy stock in Zoom and then retire. Because it's been amazing how infrastructure's been solved for the most part. There are still a lot of problems with internet access and issues that way. But we wanted to go into the market and find out what have attitudes been and have they changed, or what's going on with productivity. And we did a survey. We did this in June because if you remember, numbers were dipping significantly in June. We were thinking the whole state had moved to yellow. At that point, we're still using the color-coded system. And we thought, wow, after the 4th of July, maybe we'll all be going back to the office. We were wrong, unfortunately. But we gathered a lot of data with 7,500 participants in our survey, including an executive track and an employee track. Different businesses all over the state, including government and different sectors. 97% of participants are doing some sort of telework. 55% of that time were teleworking exclusively. 100% of the organization were teleworking. What we found, and there's new data on this, but what we found in our survey was that 66% of respondents had a positive attitude towards telework prior to the pandemic. And 57% of employers had a positive outlook towards telework prior to the pandemic. That number jumped to 86%, 20 and 30% jump. And we think even as we've further along, in fact, there was a presentation in the legislative committee where it's jumped even to kind of into the 90s of people's just perception of it. Additionally, 93% of respondents say they have maintained or increased productivity during their work from home. Other things that people have loved, 92% of people have loved how they've reduced or no commute. 72% see a benefit of how they have increased time with their family. 85% of people are saving money, while 70% of employers say that they are seeing reduced costs, savings in their organization from utility to travel to meals. The problem that we're seeing, and 50% of our respondents are saying that they do not love, they have limited connectivity with coworkers and a decreased sense of team. And we have to try and work ways to find that. The reason why we asked this question is we want to know if people will be willing to do this moving forward, specifically with air quality. 94% of employees said they'd be willing to telecommute specifically for air quality. 93% of employers said they would be willing to do it. And that's good news for us, especially when we looked at this in the summer and fall, thinking maybe if we went back to the office in November and January, we could help people implement a stay-at-home program as we built into an inversion. Granted, it doesn't look like we'll really get back into the office. We'll get back in the office till next summer. But still, we think that this telework data that we're putting together, that the state's putting together, that other organizations put together will help us identify some issues or wins as we get 1 month from now into inversion season. And so I just wanted to leave that with you. You guys are already on the team. Most of you are practicing this. You're figuring out ways to be part of the air quality solution. So what we'd like, our ask from you is to help us find people to buy in. Find ways to encourage your neighbors to be idle-free or to carpool. Help identify new wins, new situations for yourself, your neighbors, your community, your business, your friends, to help drive down these emissions and help people understand that the problem is about first weather and then first geography, then weather. But then if we can slow the growth of emissions into that inversion, we can have cleaner, better air. We're always going to have inversions. Keep in mind that just because the air looks bad doesn't mean it's necessarily always bad. Fog plays a role in this, but we have to be vigilant. And so one of the great things about Utah, one of the top things about Utah is our outdoor recreation opportunities. And so we want to ensure that this is an ongoing opportunity for us. I said this yesterday to a group that we got very, very lucky in 2002 that it snowed almost every day during the Olympics. As we continue to bid for an Olympics in whether it's 10 years or 12 years or 14 years from now, we have to continue to drive down emissions, work with weather to ensure that we can live up to our potential. That's all I have. I appreciate the time that you guys gave me. Happy to answer as many questions as you might have for me.
Thank you so much, Thom. Is my voice level back to normal?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So a couple questions that came through from Cody, and anyone else feel free to add questions to the chat. I've actually got one too after I asked Cody's, that kind of go hand in hand. It's one about how effective is it to use Tier 3 in cars older than 2017, and then also who sells Tier 3 fuel in Utah. I know that link was in the chat. Thank you for that, Michelle. But Thom, I know you mentioned before that there's specific, I don't remember all of them, but like Chevron is like a gas station that always has Tier 3. So could you go into those gas stations and then cars that are older than 2017?
Yeah, so if you have a 2018 model or greater, you're going to get an 80% reduction. If it's lower, if it's less, it's marginal, between 7% or 14%. So it's still a gain. It's still a reduction. Tier 3, it's less sulfur fuel. We'll do that. It's not It's not as significant, but it's something. And so we are, so use tier 3 fuels. To answer your question, the additional question about where can you find them? So specifically, all Chevron stations, Chevron, Speedway, Sinclair, Texaco. Those are the easy ones on the top of my head. And then you're going to see some Mavericks, some Costco's, depends on who they're buying from, where they're buying their fuel from. And so what we're working on is getting the other 2 local refineries. So Maverick buys fuel both from Marathon and from Big West. When they buy from Marathon, that's pure tier 3. When they buy from Big West, it's not 10 parts per million, it's 14 parts per million. And 14 parts per million is still pretty freaking good, because tier 2 is 30 parts per million. So it's kind of an academic exercise, but it's still a significant gain or reduction for all of us.
Thank you. I'll queue it up for Hugh, and then Cody will get to your next question. If anyone needs to hop off at 9:15, like I said, I'll send this out. So feel free to if you need to, or you can email some questions over my way, and Hugh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, India, and thanks, Thom. This is Hugh with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Hey, Hugh.
And it's great to hear you talking about telework. And, we're, as an agency, certainly looking into this, and it's really important for us to see how it's going to work. And sort of what we're looking at preliminarily is, the vehicle miles traveled. So how many miles people are actually traveling in their cars isn't going down all that much with teleworking, but it's not being concentrated, right? It's not in the peak hour commutes in the morning and in the evening. So we think that will certainly help with the air quality as those miles traveled are stretched out throughout the day, hopefully, and not compacted. But we're watching that very closely with this whole new behavior situation, right, with teleworking. A couple of questions for you. You mentioned the snowblowers, and I think I read an article last year that running a snowblower for 2 hours was the same thing as driving from Salt Lake to Miami, or Salt Lake to Miami to back, or something. Something blew my mind. Has there been any talk about at the legislature, not that you're lobbying, about limiting or prohibiting the use of things like 2-stroke motors and those types of devices that really are disproportionately adding to the air quality woes when they're used?
So great question. And you're absolutely right. Salt Lake, it's actually Los Angeles to Miami. Two-stroke engines are, you don't have a catalytic converter. It's all bad. So limiting or not allowing, let's just use current political realities as a baseline. People are ultra libertarian about what you can and cannot tell them to do. And that's just a political reality. So what the legislature has done, and UCAIR has done, and a handful of groups together, Rocky Mountain Power, is we've done ways to make it more affordable. Our biggest stumbling blocks for people participation is time and money. And so we've done three snowblower exchanges where you bring in your gas-powered snowblower, a top-end electric snowblower can cost as much as $400. We'll take your gas-powered snowblower. We'll you give us that one. We'll sell you an electric one for $60. We've done that same thing with every summer. We do a couple thousand lawnmowers. So this year's snowblower exchange has been postponed due to COVID. We just can't find a safe way to do it. But that's been kind of the way that the legislature, along with the federal government and some of the NGOs, have found to be the most effective way to move this forward.
Thank you. Okay, so to turn it back to this tier 3 question, another question from Cody. Does tier 3 change fuel mileage?
No, not that I know of. I don't believe so. Hasn't changed mine. So.
Okay, thank you. And then, like I said, add more questions to the chat. I'm going to go ahead and ask mine just because I'm curious. So you mentioned working with a variety of groups. You mentioned schools as one of them. And I've heard, about measurements taken at schools and things like that. But I'm wondering if there are ways that you've really involved kids, whether it's assemblies or some kind of school project or something like that, just because our office is really focused on, very passionate about getting every kid outdoors. And as a part of that, making sure that they learn some stewardship components of being outdoors. So I'm just wondering what projects and things like that you've done.
Yeah, that's a great question, India. We have funded and worked very closely with an organization called Utah Clean Cities, who is the champion of the Turn Your Key Be Idle Free initiative in the region. And what they do is they engage with students in the schools to spend time with parents in the pickup line, talking to them about why they should turn off their cars. And that, you think about recycling education in this country, you think about the DARE program. Recycling became something we did because in the late 80s, early 90s, they went into schools and taught kids about recycling. Now it's just something we do. We fund a program through Utah Clean Cities. We fund a program through Breathe Utah to go in and do education at the schools level to help kids be stewardships of the issue. Additionally, we helped, there is an air quality education component during driver's education. And we wrote the curriculum for that. So those are some ways that we're working with schools and kids.
Terrific, thank you. And then it looks like we just got one last question in from Hugh, and then we will do a drawing for a prize. Hugh asks, there are a handful of apps/websites showing local air quality. Any tips on which are the most reliable? And I'll add on to that too, reliable and user-friendly.
So the best app is called UCAIR. It is run by the Division of Air Quality. It'll give you your the official air quality readouts from where you are. Turn on locations. It's on both major Android and iPhone. It'll pull from your EPA station data, so it is the most reliable. So that's what it looks like right now. Additionally, it'll tell you at the bottom, give you a forecast and your actions. So it's unrestricted action right now. So Utah Air, which is one word, Utah Air, capital A. Then the best website to get tips and information of things you can do is, quite shockingly, ucair.org, UCAIR.org.
Terrific, thank you. If anyone else has anything else to add in the chat, feel free to. I'm going to go ahead and draw. I've got a bowl here with, well, I don't need the bowl. We had two folks ask questions, which thank you both. I've got two Post-its here. And Hugh Van Wagenen, you win a prize. So I will get in touch with you and figure out mailing, and we've got a couple different options. Cody, thank you so much for all the questions. That was actually really helpful for me to hear too. I didn't know a lot of that. And Thom, thank you for all the information. If you have any last thoughts, feel free to just throw them in, but we do appreciate everyone's time today and hope that you've learned something and can pass it on. I will follow up with this recording and additional resources a little bit later in the week. Thom, do you have any last thoughts?
Just keep being part of the solution. We really appreciate everybody that's engaged. It's important, and we need to keep bringing more people into the conversation. So share our videos, talk to your friends, be a part of us, follow us on socials, get out there and be part of it.
Thank you so much.